we are going to break some things down philosophically. Perhaps there are associations that you have that, idealists are setting themselves up for disappointment. Idealists are those people with their head in the clouds that are kind of delusional, right? So these are some thoughts that we can have. But what if I told you that deep down, whether you recognize it or not, you actually are an idealist? Disney was on to something. If you can dream it, you can be it. Wayne Dyer was on to something. You'll see it when you believe it. Let's begin by defining some key terms. We're going to define idealism, realism, optimism, and pessimism. They're all related. So to begin with, idealism is defined as the practice of forming or pursuing ideals, especially unrealistically. And in a philosophical sense, it's any of various systems of thought in which the objects of knowledge are held to be in some way dependent on the activity of the mind. There's an element of whimsy here. There's an element of creativity. And now let's look at what could be construed as the reverse, realism. The attitude or practice of accepting a situation as it is and being prepared to deal with it accordingly. So this is also defined as being pragmatic, right? Being practical, the quality or fact of representing a person, thing, or situation accurately or in a way that is true to life. You may think that these are polar opposites. However, the whatever is idealized, whatever is an ideal is only an ideal until it becomes true. When we are caught up in being realistic, that can inhibit ideals from becoming reality. Of course, some reason helps ground us. We've heard about pigs flying. Maybe we're not quite there yet. But this can certainly be the case with other things like your career, your dream job, your dream love interest. If we idealize something and also make the mistake of believing that it's impossible because it's ideal, that's where we fall short. That's where we sell ourselves short. So now let's dive into optimism and pessimism. Optimism, hopefulness and confidence about the future or the successful outcome of something. The key word here is hope. So essentially, we've heard words describing optimism that include having a sense of confidence and also hope, right? Believing that success, however you define it, is possible. So oftentimes optimism has been synonymous with idealism, when really idealism is what gets the worst rap just because it's not about having hope, right? Idealism is the active pursuit of achievement, of attainment, or perhaps there are naysayers that don't think you can have it or be it or do it. And optimism is a little less committed. It's this sense of hope that maybe it can happen. This optimism fuels the possibility of idealism. And now let's take a step over to pessimism, a tendency to see the worst aspect of things or believe that the worst will happen, a lack of hope or confidence in the future. In a philosophical sense, it's pretty negative, believing that evil will prevail over good, where optimism is more likely to say, well, I hope the good guy wins. We could do a whole other video on good versus bad, but just keeping things simple here, right? So pessimism, believing that the worst is going to happen, first of all, can be a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it can also feed into this sense of realism. Don't get your hopes up. And it effectively cements you where you are. I'd like you to think back to when you were a little kid And maybe there were certain things that you really wanted, things that you dreamed about, that you were like, wouldn't this be cool if this was real? Or maybe toys at the toy store that you were like, oh yeah, I feel like I deserve that. I want that. And then, well-meaningly so, right? Let's say that your caregivers infuse a healthy dose of reality and maybe say things like, oh no, you can't have that. You don't need that. And that sense of idealism, that sense of optimism can begin to dim. That sense of childlike wonder that actually doesn't need to be exclusive to children begins to feel less accessible. So the parameters for success in turn become externalized. And let's say having a certain job that people that you respect say that you should have, or being in the type of relationship that looks good on paper, that's when these things start to enter our lives. And we become more and more disconnected from that inherent, in fact, healthy sense of idealism. It has been disowned. So while we could mourn the years or the opportunities lost because of this overemphasis on what's realistic versus going for the thing, not just with our heads, but with our hearts, being all in and actually allowing the excitement of the possibility to enter our field. So instead of mourning that, allow this to be an invitation. Things can move so quickly once you make a decision. When I think of the most successful people, let's say the innovators, the founders and CEOs of these really amazing out there companies, and then I think of the people that our society deems to be the least successful, perhaps people that are down on their luck, homeless, that sort of thing, there can be a fine line. Perhaps there's a sense of idealism and one is channeled in a way that fosters dreams coming true, and another is filled with overwhelm and not truly embodying believing that whatever that sense of idealism is possible. So my invitation to you, I do have some spaces available to speak with people who are interested in long-term one-on-one coaching engagements, leadership in life, in re-infusing, reigniting that healthy sense of idealism that makes all the damn things possible. I am wishing you a day that exceeds your wildest expectations. Until next time.